if Huntress does not move all that stuff around on me all the time.
We try not to. We try when we do a massive UI overhaul, we try and have it be for a reason, like new feature, something like that.
Shameless for again more how the sausage is made type stuff, but also we'll give it just usually I started on the 5 for see a few more folks are looking at their watches and going, oh shoot, that started. So
yeah. And somebody asked if that was the right site on the OSINT for getting the materials. So, all right, Richard, you're grabbing that. Yeah, we are going to start here in a moment.
Yeah, and the guide is just below for the articles for some of the definitions there.
Oh, cool.
So, all right. Well, I think we're right. I think enough folks have showed up that we can get this party started. So, I'll go ahead and say morning, everybody. My name is Will McPhee, president of Systems Support and Huntress provider out of Marshfield, Massachusetts. And today I'm honored to have Ethan from Huntress. Huntress is one of our endpoint detection and response products that we use for helping being able to protect the folks that we have under management. So what's great for Huntress is, they're always on, quick notifications, and they add a nice human touch. And so it's not pure automated, but, human being does actually look at some of the alerts and things that come through to make sure that, hey, this is a true fire alarm and not a false positive. And they are an incredible wealth of resource for cybersecurity. They see way more than I could ever hope to see. And the one thing they've been talking a lot in their personal portions recently is this open source intelligence and how this is coming together and crafting a lot of the attacks that go on in small businesses. So with that, I will turn it over to Ethan. And
yeah, thank you very much, Will. Ethan Tancredi, I'm technical account manager here at Huntress, and we're going to talk about the footprints on the web and what hackers know about you that you might not realize they do know about you. Give me a second. I seem to have lost my speaker notes, so I'm going to throw those over there. Go back to full screen. The key thing that we are going to be talking through today is, what is OSINT? And we'll go in so that you don't have to Google what that is, but also how there is data everywhere and you might not realize it, and why you can't hide, and then, how to be prepared. And because one of the things I love about my job at Huntress is that I am asked to kind of educate people on a regular basis about what we are seeing and make them more aware of just cybersecurity best practices, not necessarily selling a Huntress product. And so this is what we're going to be talking about today. So open source intelligence, when we say that, what does that really mean when we say, oh, it's OSINT or open source? It's this whole thing of ways that threat actors and people can go about and get data. And really what it comes down to, Will, it's a fancy way of saying, hey, I can find out more about somebody by Googling or looking for you on the web. And that is like the key part of what OSINT is about. It's the whole point about it being open source. This means that people are using free services. So, Will, what are some ways that you go and use free services that, maybe data shows up all over the place? What's the first thing that pops into your mind?
yeah, I mean, it's as I think about it too, when you have that friend who seems to be able to figure out information about, I'm thinking back to when I was in college or something, and so like, oh, so-and-so has a new significant other, and immediately you have that one friend who can find them on social media in like no time at all.
Yes.
So,
my daughter is excellent at that. She's in her mid-20s and she's like, oh yeah, I found that person on Facebook. I went and I saw this. Or hold on, Facebook now totally documents where I am because nobody's on Facebook in their 20s. I'm just saying. But yeah, you're totally right. Like social media is like one of those key ones that are out there. And on the business side, LinkedIn, right? That that's the place where I go and look. Oh, who is this person who maybe I met at a conference? Maybe they're applying for a job, right? I go look at those places. I'm assuming you guys do something similar, right? When somebody
Mm,
applies for a position with you all, that's probably something you go check out.
yeah, absolutely. And it's especially too, even for marketing as well, right? If you have, and any business that goes out has a marketing department or even performs some marketing that's beyond, actually, even if you have you're just in, doing networking groups like BNI or any other type of chamber events or something like that, you might go to the LinkedIn and then see the who does somebody else know and look for that type of connection portion, so that kind of going into what somebody publicly puts up, like, a company website or something like that, for what else might be going on. I mean, that marketing and sales data, you know, especially as a company, you put it out to make sure that, you have some additional pieces that, so people can learn more about you. But that's the stuff you kind of want them to know, right?
That is the stuff that you want them to know. So, I mean, my background, Will, you know this. People on this call probably don't, but before I was at Huntress for the past, 3 years, I was on the MSP as a service provider out of Wilmington, Delaware. And so we had on our company website, about us, and we would highlight key individuals. I was a leader at that particular MSP. And so, there was a short little bio there, different than my LinkedIn, but kind of talking about who I was, what I did. And yeah, you use that company website to build relationships, right? For those, going to those in-person marketing events, learning about them, right? That's the whole point. But that data is out there suddenly about who you are, what you do at those companies. And so that becomes a key part of where data maybe sits that's freely available. Uh, and then the other one that people don't really think about is just all the public repositories that are out there. Like data, there is public data on you all over the place. And I mean, Will, I know you and I talked about this a little bit before we started going today. This is like where the info brokers go and like will scrape information, right? You want to talk a little bit about some of the repositories you know of out there?
Well, I mean, I think something that's important to note beyond just the public repository is that, especially here in the age of AI, that if something is publicly available, yeah, places like ChatGPT or Google's Gemini or anything like that are scraping those same repositories to try and feed the models as well.
Oh
So,
yeah, like that.
um,
You're totally right. Like that becomes key to those large language models, right? It's how they were educating them to learn in that generative AI was to scrape and learn from those. And repositories could be your photo rolls, newspapers, right? Newspapers are public repositories of information. I'm out in Syracuse, New York. Um, and, when I took a new job with a MSP up in this region, that got put into the local paper, right? That suddenly became something that was there that then gets scraped by Gemini, ChatGPT, and can be fed into those models. And we're going to talk more about that a little bit later, but like those become incredibly powerful tools to understand from there, definitely. So like if we're saying, hey, data is everywhere, let's take a look, about, where can we find it? So, if I were a threat actor, or somebody who is out there, one of the first places I'm going to go is I'm going to go to this site, Have I Been Pawned? And I'm going to say, all right, is there an email address? Now you can go here as a regular person and you can put in this information. It's a great thing to check. Hey, have you been, you know, compromised in a data breach? And I can put in an email address here and, we go forward from here and say, all right, what's happened? So I'm going to go put in my old work address and say, all right, yeah, Ethan, when he was at my Sherpa, what is there something there? Because the threat actor is going to go grab that and they're going to go, oh, look, let's see where there's data about Ethan. And these are all different breaches that have happened with that particular email. I haven't been with this company since 2020, but you can see different dates when this data was dropped, right? February of 24, demand science, my email address, employers, job titles, phone numbers, what my physical address was. Question Pro is going to have data from 2022. Park Mobile, email, license plates, names, passwords, phone numbers. And so threat actors are going to look at this data when they are trying to target a business and figure out, all right, what could I use here? Or maybe there's a way I can use this data. And so from have I been pawned, then if I was like, hey, Park Mobile, I'm really curious, how would I go about getting data from that Park Mobile, right? I can go to www.google.com, and if I go, download that verification database and get a copy, like this is the, verification IO. This is where that data was and how I could go download the directions. This is a GitHub repository, tells when it was downloaded, and I can start to, as a threat actor, follow these directions and have access to it. And I can start to query the data that is coming through. So in that Park Mobile data, there was a license plate information. Well, what kind of car does Ethan drive? Let's go. How would we pivot to that? Well, one thing you could do, you can go to a car part side, O'Reilly Autos, and you can say, all right, well, I want some information. So, from the breach, I live in New York. Well, I can go put in a New York state and then the particular license plate, and this is the license plate that's in this data set for the Park Mobile. I can go search and, Ethan owns a 2017 Nissan Rogue. Now, this is what third-party companies are tying into these different data sources. They have a tie-in to, O'Reilly has a tie-in to the New York State DMV and multiple DMVs. It's not just New York. And so this is suddenly a piece of information somebody could start to put together to understand who I am and what there is about me. And then, we talked about social media. Well, okay, great. I'm going to go and say, all right, let's go do just a Google search. And I'll actually just, instead of putting this in my toolbar, I'll just drop it directly into a Google search. But this is where you can start to do key searches. Like they understand how to do searches. So this just says, hey, look at the site LinkedIn, Ethan Tancredi, tell me who's there. Oh, yeah, there's my LinkedIn profile. I'm not even signed in. I can start to see some of the key parts of it. You could do similar things about seeing posts. You could see at other posts where I've done at previous companies. Now they can start to follow through this and understand what is going on. From there, they could go and do all right, well, we saw some business things. Now we want to say Facebook. Oh, does Ethan have anything interesting on Facebook? Oh, Facebook shows an old picture of me, couple kids, other people. I don't even have to have a login. I could start to just, depending on what my settings are in Facebook, these are things that could start to pop up and be exposed out there. Not much interesting on me on Facebook. We could then pivot over to Instagram, similar kind of search. And you go, oh, well, there's an Ethan, and go take a look. Is this him? Well, yeah, looks like him. And, we can start to see some of the images and things I've done. Oh, that, there's some more kids. There's this thing, CNY Rugby, betterworld.org picture. And we can say, okay, well, what's what's going on there? There's some rugby, CNY Rugby, betterworld.org. Well, we'll CNY Rugby, betterworld.org. Oh, okay. Now we can start to see there's some campaigns, sponsor a youth player, about CNY Rugby. We go to this website. We can start to learn more, maybe about people, contacts, right? They can start to investigate. And I can tell you on this page, I'll be listed as part of our board of directors. And so they can start to put together a personal profile, if you will, of ways to interact with me.
So it's pretty crazy here too, just to say from starting from one launch point of a public repository of, hey, who's been in a breach? And then we could call that, 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4 or 5 tabs later, we've got what kind of car you drive, what's
Yep.
one of the main interests that you have, or what you do on the weekends, which is honestly a lot more marketing data than you would get from a Zoom info list already.
Exactly. You start to have an understanding, and threat actors are going to gather this, and then you could go all the way to in those data breaches, like, all right, in New York State, we have voter lookups, and so you could say, okay, we could then Google, what counties. So you go Syracuse, New York County, and that's okay. It's Onondaga County. Super. Great. We know Onondaga County is probably where Ethan lives because that's where this information is saying. We know my last name. We know my first name. Date of birth. Yeah, that's going to be in the Have I Been Pawned. If we start to scroll down through the different data source, one of these has my date of birth. There it is, verifications.io database that we dropped down. It has some physical addresses as well, so we can then cross-reference this, right? Okay, so we know Ethan was born 08/13, 1972, and then in that database, it has a address with zip code, and we can do a verification. Oh, yeah, okay, so Ethan's supposed to vote at the Fayetteville Free Library and 240 Salt Springs Road. Looks like where he is, according to, the government and his voting record. So suddenly you have where I live. And all of these things get into that picture, Will, the key part, for lack of a better description. Like this becomes important of building a profile and understanding it. And so your data is everywhere. Is really the key point. Like, and it can, to your point, it can be used to pivot from one or two small pieces into these bigger pieces. And this is what, data aggregators do, but it's what threat actors can do too. And, what are they going to do? They're going to want to understand me, create rapport. They are going to want to go forward and really get to understand from this so that they can, create that urgency at the end of the day. And that's really important because why do we care about, this is that they need to create an effective attack. At the end of the day, this is what it's all about, isn't it, Will? About an effective attack.
Yeah, because it's, we have all gotten the email of, I'll use the stereotype for the Nigerian prince with $21 million of gold bars in the apartment and needs help getting it out of the country. And, some basic security awareness allows you to get to the point where like, all right, that's kind of yesterday's news. We know that's a scam, that something's misspelled. It doesn't, it just doesn't really hit home and be like, this is a legitimate ask. There's not enough context. It doesn't sound, and especially too, if you understand the target. I'm sure the other thing that everybody may have bumped into is the payroll scam, where, how does someone figure out that Annie is the payroll contact at Acme Construction, and you can take that contact piece, you can take that to the next level with that public information of saying like, all right, I've got a Gmail account that looks a little more personal. um I now know that they're in this area, so I need to make sure that I use a bank that's actually in this area. And maybe I'll even quote something that's going on in their life recently because I saw something in, to your point of maybe social media part, maybe just something you find in a public depository.
No, like, and I mean, there's two other things. One, the Nigerian prince, we've all kind of thought about, but like now attacks are pivoting to, instead of being the Nigerian prince, they are saying using, and we'll get into this later about how they're using tools like ChatGPT and some of the deep fakes to pretend to be family members, right, who are in trouble. So they'll create urgency around that and rapport. Hey, this is your grandchild who is stuck in a country traveling and needs some help. There's all sorts of ways that they are trying to elicit via social engineering. There's all sorts of ways. And so I think the next thing really to show, how they do this and understand it is to do a little quick show. This is a video, and I think the audio will come through if I've done it correctly. Otherwise, there are going to be closed captions of showing what happens when a somebody who is trained on simple, social engineering will try and take over an account with a business. But what they're going to do, what we're going to see happen here from this real future video is very similar to what they're going to do in real life.
So I invited a few of the world's best hackers to try to hack me and show me where my vulnerabilities are. And now I'm going to meet them in Las Vegas for DEF CON, the biggest hacker convention of the year. They're going to hack me using social engineering, which is essentially hacking without any code. They just use a phone and internet connection.
Do you want to do a sample of phishing call?
What's phishing?
Phishing is voice solicitation, and basically what you do is you use the phone to extract information or data can be used in a later attack.
Let's do it. Who are you going to call?
Maybe I'll call your cell phone provider and see if I can get them to give me your email address.
I bet they're good. I bet they have my back. But yeah, go for it.
I'm going to spoof from your number, so it's going to look like it's calling from you.
Okay.
Hi,
And so
I'm
she's
so
just
sorry.
playing
Can you
this
hear me
video,
okay?
this
My
audio of a
baby-
baby crying
I'm
in the
sorry.
background that she does at all. It's crazy.
We're about to apply for a loan, and we just had a baby, and he's like, get this done today, so I'm so sorry I can't call you back. I'm trying to log into our account for his information, and I can't remember what email address we used to log the account. The baby's crying, and can you help me? Awesome.
In just 30
At
seconds,
gmail.com.
Jessica gets access to my personal email address.
Well, if I needed to add our older daughter on her account so she could call in and make changes, how would I need to go about doing that? You would have to send me a secure PIN through a text message. Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think I'll be able to receive a text message if I'm on the phone. Awesome.
I'm not on there either.
In just 30 seconds,
So I thought when we got married, he added me to the account.
Jess uses my girlfriend's name and a fake social security number
5127.
to set up her own personal access to my account.
Wait, I'm sorry. So there's no password on my account right now? Can I set that up?
She even gets the support person to change my password.
Thank you so much for your help today.
So she just basically blocked me out of my own account.
I'll get her fed after this. He
All
added
right,
me to the
thank you.
account.
Jess uses my girlfriend's name and a fake
I mean, yeah, she utilizing a baby crying, having some social engineering skills. Like she had, there's some skills she has there, but like she is leveraging that to get into it. And the key point is like cyber criminals are out to earn money. Like this is a business, right? Like, and they're going to try and earn money all sorts of ways. So they're going to do something like cloning a cell phone number is not actually that challenging to do. Those of you 2FA, you probably tell people will all the time, hey, use 2FA. But are you also talking to them about, hey, use actually an app instead of a cell phone number, right? For SMS.
Well,
you want to talk about that?
This is exactly why, because that scam actually happened not to one of our clients, but one of our clients' clients. So it was a payroll company, and the payroll company gets a phone call from one of the numbers for, hey, same deal. I need to make changes to my bank account for payment stuff. It was coming from it was coming from the phone number, and the only thing that kind of raised the hairs on the back of the neck for the person. He goes, something's not right here. Your voice doesn't sound right. You don't sound like John. I'm gonna call you back. So hangs up, calls the number back. Same person answers, and he goes, that's not John. So he hangs the call up. He stops, texts John's wife, and goes, is John calling changed payroll information? Because no, he's sitting next to me at blah 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 tavern. He goes, okay. So what had happened is somebody pulled that scam, gotten into their Verizon cell phone account, and had the phone number forwarded to the attacker's number. And so they were spoofing it, and the same deal. Even every text message that guy got, every phone call that guy got went to this other attacker, all just through, just calling to Verizon and pulling the same scam. And
Yeah.
what was the goal? Stealing this guy's paycheck, stealing his whole paycheck. So
No, exactly. And like they are out to get money all sorts of ways, and they want, like, the key thing to know is that they are professionals. Like, this is what their job is. They work normally. It's not just a person in their basement by themselves. These are crews, like real crews with like HR teams and quotas, and like they are a business with playbooks of how to do this, that they train their people how to do it. And it's big business. I mean, so FBI, IC3 is the reporting arm of the FBI. And so last year, 2024, over 850,000 complaints of cyber crimes, $16.6 billion in losses were reported. So this is just people reporting. This is not like hey, we think it's this much. This is like people contacting them and reporting their losses. The crazy thing
that's
is
only the people who had the stones to tell the FBI.
exactly. So it's only the people who were willing. So like one of the things I encourage when I'm on these conversations, if you do suffer a monetary loss, report it to the cyber FBI, even if it's small, because like they keep track of these and they will do takedowns once it hits certain numbers. So you might not be, a big enough fish, if you will, to take it down by yourself, but you could be part that finally tips that scale over so the FBI takes action. And, so it's crazy about how much losses were out there. And I think from 2020 to 2024, so 5-year period, it went from just over 3 billion to 16 billion. So, I mean, talk about a business that is scaling it's crazy. And like the types of crimes, these are all types of crimes we're talking about, right? Phishing, spoofing, extortion, personal data breaches, investment scams, tech support scams. Like they are trying to figure out. Business email compromise is a huge one that businesses do a lot. We're going to talk about this, but like business email compromise is one where, they are trying to take over that identity so that they can route money to different places. I mean, so like it is crazy the types of different ways they can get to. And yes, there's ransomware, there's data breach, but there's all sorts of types that they are trying to do to generate money in these ways. And so I think it's important to talk a little bit about the ways the attacks can come in traditionally into a business. Like people, they can see it a whole bunch of ways, but like the way we see commonly is the phishing email. Do you want to talk a little bit about the phishing and how you've seen those phishing attacks change over time?
I mean, it's still I'll use the marketing analogy at the end of the day, because to the point of like making money, the marketing and sales portion and what the criminal syndicates do are the same thing. It's a sale, just instead of, providing a service that is, helps humanity, instead just steals.
Yeah.
But I mean, the old ways is still the best way. And
Yep.
really all this OSINT stuff is just so that the phishing emails go from that stereotypical one that I mentioned earlier, or the other favorite one of the whole, look, I'm emailing you from your own email address and I have, video of you doing something naughty. And if you don't give me 300 Bitcoin, I'm going to send it to all your contacts, the blackmail portion.
Yep.
But,
And
but those,
exactly.
but those were really like generic sales letters. If you had to make a comparison to the normal world of just like, maybe somebody bites for it. And the idea being, if you get a million of them out there, if you get a 0.01% response, that's still like 10 sales. And that 10 sales is enough to pay for whatever's going on. But now, having all this public information out there and the AI being able to grab it for you, because the AI, you're asking marketing data. You're not asking like, what's the best way to get Ethan to turn over his paycheck to me? I'm just asking for sales and marketing data. And anybody on here, for a quick tip, if you want to give it a test drive, if you have a ChatGPT business account, hit that deep research button and ask it to do a deep dive on your next prospecting call for whoever you're going to talk to, and prepare to be a little shocked as to what it's able to find about like common talking points, charities they may be involved with or care about. So really, the phishing email has gone from the spray and pray, $20 million gold in Korea, and I need help getting it out, to,
very targeted spear phishing kind of attacks that are using this OSINT material, as you said, to really say, okay, this is what you care about, and driving that. And to your point, yeah, they sometimes spoof an email, make it look like it came from somebody, but you have to go into the headers of that email to look at it directly and say, oh, where are we going? What's going on? They'll impersonate others or attack. Part of what also happens is once they land and take over an account, an identity, they do OSINT in that identity to try and move to the next stage, right? Because maybe they land in somebody's account, they land in your will, and you're like, maybe I don't have anything really valuable here in Will's, but I see Will deals with somebody else. Let's impersonate Will and move on to another one.
I'll even pick on one of our attendees here, Mark Pajorno, for I know he works with a lot of hotels, and I imagine that there are some incredible targets that he might speak to that be high up at a Marriott or something like that. So
yeah, exactly. Like, it is all about leveraging that information, so that impersonation threat becomes key. And then you were kind of talking about it a little bit, but that deep fake attack with ChatGPT, and now with the generative AI that's happening around video and voice, is like crazy what some of the deep fake attacks are going on. We actually just put out a blog, I think last week, about a deep fake attack that we saw. We were at the end of it. They deployed Huntress into a Mac after the fact. And yes, Macs can get attacked with all sorts of malware. Just because you're on a Mac, it does not mean you are immune from attacks. I'm sorry to tell you. But what happened was, a partner of ours said, hey, this particular end user was involved in an attack. We need you to look at the Mac. We found evidence of persistence, meaning basically ability to get back in. It was an info stealer on the machine in particular. The end user was involved in crypto finance. And what had happened was they had gotten an invite to a meeting from higher ups in the company. Somebody impersonated a higher up, invited them to a Zoom meeting. Cameras weren't working, but they used deepfake technology to impersonate the voices of like 3 key people in this person's company and an outside person. They asked the victim to share her screen. She couldn't get Zoom to share her screen. They're like, you know what? You're on a Mac. They had done their research. OSINT had kicked in, and they were like, here's the link, do this. You need this add-on to help you with a Zoom add-on. Made it look like a legit Zoom add-on, and they ran it, and that's what then she downloaded and installed. She started to be able to share her screen and show the data. She was showing confidential data to people who weren't her bosses and this other investor. But B, they put together a tool to harvest data. And like that's where the technology is going to come to. Like it's going to become harder and harder on this.
Yeah, I mean, even, selfishly for the deep fake, and especially, AI being able to do training models, even thinking about my own position for it as you kind of, look around the corner for, how to be prepared for it for my voice, I've got a few hours of webinars up online. I wouldn't be too surprised, and wouldn't be too surprised if my voice isn't too hard to clone for, unless I all of a sudden get a lot more sing-song. I don't know how.
Exactly. Like we do these things. I do webinars regularly. Like maybe you get invited to attend someplace and you give a public speech, right? Like my understanding is they need like 15 minutes max of data, and they can start to make it sound like your voice very much. And video is the other thing that is starting to get better on this. I've seen reports of, who was it? I think it was KnowBe4, who hired a threat actor who was trying to get into their solutions, and the person did a video interview, but like the camera worked a little bit and it looked like the person who was on the profile page, and it was only after the fact that they realized that a North Korean threat actor was trying to get into KnowBe4 to know more about their country and the attacks. And so like these are the things, yes, currently is being used by what I'll call state actors, but we have seen from what happens to the cybercrime. Yes, it starts off at the state actors who start doing it, but technology gets cheaper, it gets faster, it gets better, and it gets easier to disseminate, and it moves down. GPS back in the day was only used by government, right? Now it's in our phones. It's
Gone is the Garmin that used to suction to the windshield, and man, if you didn't have the updated maps, yeah, exactly. Moving quickly in one direction.
Yeah, exactly. And so like this is stuff to be. So let's talk about, hopefully we have gotten people conscious about, hey, what are some things? So let's talk. I like to talk about both free and some paid things because they're both valuable. Like, so, let's talk about some of the behavior solutions. Like if you haven't learned one thing, definitely be aware of what you're sharing. Like I like to say, share less online. And this goes to, you were talking about that payroll scam that somebody fell for. I saw a business where similar kind of thing, a CEO posted online that she was going to go on vacation to Mexico. A threat actor impersonated her to her financial person and said, hey, Sally, I can't remember the person's name, but Sally, I need everybody's W-2s because this was like, January 1st, the CEO put out, I'm going to Mexico, and said, threat actor said, hey, I need everybody's W-2s. I'm going to be in Mexico for a couple weeks. I need them to review on the plane down just to make sure they're good before we send them out. Sally, Sally, I can't remember the person's name, but Sally, I need everybody's W-2s because this was like, January 1st, the CEO put out, I'm going to Mexico, and said, threat actor said, hey, I need everybody's W-2s. I'm going to be in Mexico for a couple weeks. I need them to review on the rush, because that's where they get you, is when you rush. Like slow down is one of the key things you should be doing. Thinking she didn't notice that, there was, because, the CEO had shared, and this thing about out of bounds communication process is key, right? Like your friend you're talking about who they called the wife, right? Like, what are your out of bound processes when something doesn't seem correct? That is key. Like if you are like, well, I'm emailing with them, so that must be good, and I replied, well, is their email address compromised? Is their cell phone compromised? Do you have ways to communicate, especially about key things on with these out of bounds things? And then because we are dealing with money, what are your business policies around things like fund transfers? Like, this is an easy one to put in place, but threat actors, what they will do, they will take over an identity, an email address, and then send an email, say, hey, our banking information changed. Please now send payments here. I know you have this old invoice. We're waiting payment. Send it here.
That's I know that real estate attorneys have done a really good job at updating around this, saying, hey, wiring instructions are only coming via FedEx. So, one of the other things they'll say too is exactly what letter deliverer it's going to come from, to be absolutely explicit about, your funding instructions are going to come from this type of whatever. And granted, somebody could figure that out, but for the threat actors, do they want to spend they'd have to then get the FedEx label to come from a local address. So that might be a different set of problems, a different type of criminal, but no, it provides that barrier to entry that's appropriate. And then and even for the out of bounds communication process, one thing that's key to hit home on that is that everybody understands it. I have a story for a CPA that, same deal, work with CEO, gets the request. Hey, I need you to wire, we got this new deal going on in Florida. I need you to wire $1.2 million to this bank account to, be able to, get this deal kicked off. And the CPA, to their credit, picks up the phone and calls the CEO's office and gets the front desk person and says, I just got a suspicious funding request for a Florida deal asking to move this amount of money. Is this legitimate? And the front desk person just said, yeah, he's really busy. It's probably real. Just go for it. It's like, no, I need to talk to him. She said, no. And the front desk person just goes, no, do it. Okay. Not 5 minutes after executing the transfer does hi, this is the head of security at TD Bank. You just wired this much money to an account open 15 minutes ago. We have a couple questions.
Wow. Yeah. And so that out of bounds communications and like slowing it down is like the key message as well. Like, if you could take that extra moment to think, somebody was talking to me recently about, it's the equivalent of like driving in some ways. Like, if you're just driving down the road at 25 miles an hour, it's really the chance of getting in a car crash at that point, because you're focused on driving, not going to really happen that much. You're flying down the road at 100 miles an hour, it's
70.
the equivalent of like driving in some ways. Like, if you're just driving down the road at 25 miles an hour, it's really the chance of getting in a car crash at that point, because you're focused on driving, it's going to really happen that much. Teams messages, emails, text messages, we get bombarded with all these things. You have deadlines, you have somebody else on the call, and it's really easy to say, oh, I'll just rush through, this, instead of taking that moment, slowing down, and saying, oh, hold on, let me patch you through. I get the CEO is busy, but this sounds important. Yeah, it's key. And those fund transfer scams can happen to any business. Huntress had one where we went through and had somebody take over one of our vendors who we deal with, who tried to switch us $100,000 invoice. And we had the policies to say, hey, call that person, and calling work. Charlie asked about, are there companies or bounties actively trying to take down groups, or is it just the FBI? FBI is definitely the major group. Local law enforcement is also somebody who's really good to talk to. I honestly advise, talk to your local sheriff's department, because they may very well have bounties or the right people to interact with. There's several groups, but like normally your local sheriffs will be tied into that, because they will deal with criminal cases. Your local municipality, depending on the size you are, Like, I'm out in Syracuse, New York. My police department's large enough. They probably have somebody who has cybercrime. But previously, I used to live at one point in a small town of 1,000 people up in Maine. I guarantee you, we did our 5-person police department that was servicing us did not have those resources, but our sheriff's department probably did. Will, what has your experience been about reporting or dealing with that? Anything there?
So far for us, it's just been the FBI. I know, actually, Charlie, I'd be interested for where you, between where you're located. I'm willing to bet big old Boston has something. I'd be shocked if it didn't. But, I mean, obviously, because this is in the crime world, it's not like there's really like vigilantes, because, it is law enforcement at the end of the day. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, actually, Charlie, that is a good question. Now I want to figure out if Boston Police Department has a
Something there.
cyber unit. So I'm going to look that up after this.
But and then we'll start to get into some technical solutions, right? Obviously, you want to be using next-gen email filtering solution. I am sure this is mandatory as part of your probably base solutions that you are offering to your clients, is some sort of next-gen email filtering, trying to do things of catching the spam and the attack, those phishing emails, that there are ways that they can get found. It is required at this point in day and time, I would say.
Yeah, and it's especially too, even with the, some of that is, there are still some companies out there that we have to get to, like a Google Workspace or a Microsoft 365. And then, just having the service, you still have to go that next step and configure it. So,
Yep.
Hey, can it take a known malicious one out? Do you enforce certain filtering rules? So, I mean, it's the next gen is really the, making sure that you have the appropriate warnings and pieces in place. But again, kind of to that payroll scam part, somebody sets up a Gmail account, uses the sets up a Gmail account, it's perfectly legitimate, and then that one will go through because it's, it's no different than my own personal email. But that's where this next part of the security awareness training is really key. Of the, that definitely, I know a lot of insurance companies are requiring it now. We switched to Huntress's security awareness training from WebRoots recently. The reason being that, reporting was a lot better. I liked the design of the phishing emails. And it's a nice private way to, you don't have to shame an employee for clicking on something at the wrong time, but it's, the appropriate, that making sure people have that piece going of trust but verify.
Yeah. And it really is, I think the key part you said about that shame, it's developing a culture of cybersecurity awareness. That's what your security awareness training is key for. But it isn't about shaming people. It's about empowering them to raise a hand that, hey, I saw something suspicious. It's the see something, say something kind of process. And endpoint detection and response, why do I have EDR here? Yes, next generation AV is going to be key. You're going to have that, but you also need an EDR, which is looking at processes and what's kind of happening after the fact, it becomes key. One of the things that Huntress built into our EDR recently is the ability to detect what are called favicons. So those little icons that are on a web page, that's called a favicon, and threat actors will grab those icons and redirect them so that they'll use, I've landed on a Microsoft page, but it's actually not a Microsoft page, it's a different page. We can actually now detect when people are going to pages like that at times and send an alert and say, hey, looks like an end user landed on this. You need solutions that are thinking outside the box and alerting you and being able to detect when end users are making mistakes, potentially. Not maliciously, but because they're acting fast. Some other, key things on a technical side, identity threat detection and response becomes critical, because this is where the world of cybercrime is moving to, is account takeover. They've realized that endpoints are much harder to compromise nowadays than they used to be. And so the identity, your email address, is used to get into all sorts of places. Maybe you have single sign-on from your email that goes directly into your HR system. That's a SaaS-based program, right? So now all I have to do is grab Will's email and I can get into his payroll. I can get into his benefits. I can get into these other things. Those become really key to have monitoring detection about. Obviously, you need to have MFA on all of those. Identity monitoring solutions, dark web monitoring. Like, part of me is like, part of it feels a little scammy because like you are going to lose data on a regular basis, but they're good to be aware of. And what I would say is probably even more important than an identity monitoring solution is definitely have a good password manager so you're keeping unique passwords for all of your accounts. Like, you need to have a password solution. Don't be storing that in a browser, on an Excel document on your machine. Like, password manager is going to be key. And then something people don't always think about from a business perspective is business banking solutions have something called positive pay. And this means that to send out a payment, it actually has to get a double check by the bank. So there's a great way to slow down and allow recovery if you do send a payment out to a threat actor. I know we're getting close to wrapping up here, Will, but what are some other technical solutions you all think about or discuss with your clients that maybe we haven't covered or you want to dive into deeper?
It's definitely a process of, when, not if, right? And some of it too is for password management, using a password manager, using those random generated ones. But I would say that identity threat detection response is huge. That, the table stakes these days are watching those sign-ins for those key online platforms, and that if there is a suspicious sign-in, that somebody's doing something for it. We were using something previously that would just say, hey, picking on, hey, there was a login from Ryan from the Netherlands. And it's like, well, Ryan is here in the South Shore, so I know he's not in the Netherlands, so what's going on? And we would have to manually go in and, somebody from our team would have to go take care of it. And I know we moved to Huntress for being able to grab that so that, hey, if a few boxes are checked of it's logged into the, we see something for a login from the Netherlands, we see all of a sudden a VPN, and then we see this suspicious rule creation. All right, lock the account down and have the human come in and clean it up type deal. So those have really been the big ones. I know that I've seen a lot of businesses for the positive pay usually move to that after some type of scam, unfortunately, has been executed against them.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is, having the ability to generate the alert is the big one. And so the security incident and event manager, so SIEM, SIEM, is a big one of, you have that because that identity threat detection, that usually hooks into the email systems. It's an easy one, but somebody uses Salesforce. Somebody uses maybe Okta as an identity provider. So just being able to detect those suspicious sign-ins in there to have somebody review it is really the big one.
Yeah. Nope. That's so key to be reviewing and thinking about this. So I know we're getting close on time here. You all put together some free material at systemsupport.com/OSINT that people can use. You want to talk about, what some of the material is you have out there at that site and, ways to interact and get, talk to you if there are some things here that they're like, I have some questions about what I'm doing in my security stack.
Yeah, absolutely. For the systemsupport.com/OSINT, scroll, halfway down to the page. There's a self-audit worksheet for filling out for saying like, hey, what might be publicly on the web for seeing, hey, what's out there, just doing a quick gut check. And then, you also there are some, if you want to talk to us, have us be able to give a review as well. There's a chance to, at least hop on a call with us and see what's going on. I'm more than happy just to talk with folks to see how things are going.
Yep, definitely. Super. I would definitely encourage you to reach out to Will. He's got lots of very good ideas. This is second webinar I know I've done with you. We always have some great conversations, so I really appreciate it, Will, letting me talk to you, talk to your clients and prospects. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I am there as Ethan Tancredi. You can do some of the OSINT, and happy to answer questions you might have about cybersecurity or things around there at any time.
Yeah, appreciate everybody joining us today. Thank you, Ethan, for taking time out of your day to come talk with us. And I hope, and especially too, I know some of this stuff can be scary for the doom and gloom portions, but it's just, sometimes it's a good reminder just to remember, hey, that stuff is out there. Just having a healthy degree of skepticism for when a request comes inbound that you weren't expecting. From my time when I was in the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, trust but verify.
Yep.
So
trust but verify is the key thing. It's always better to be a little skeptical than not. So,
well, thank
All
you,
right.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, Ethan.
You're welcome.
And, thanks, everybody. Here's the better weather.
Yeah, definitely. Bye-bye, everybody.